I wanted to go out and change the world, but I couldn't find a babysitter. My brother gave me this card for my 38th birthday. He'd meant it to be funny, but it struck a chord so deep that I burst into tears. For 10 years BC, that's before children, not before Christ, I'd climbed treacherous mountains, I'd dived tropical oceans, I'd trained countless people how to survive in the jungle, and yet, here I was, defeated by 2 small children. When my first daughter was born, I naively thought I could just strap her to my back and carry on. I'd seen women the world over do it. How hard could it be? As it turns out, it was a lot harder than it looked on many levels. And then when my second daughter was born, and I realized that my first daughter was exhibiting developmental issues, my world really closed in. The thing is, expeditions are my reset button. On expedition, I remember that I can do pretty much anything. I can cope with volcanoes erupting, landslides. At home, I have been known to get stressed if the dishwasher doesn't drain properly. And on an expedition, I use my body in a real way. I get fit and strong by running and climbing and swimming. And I worry less. It's as though my physical senses become so overwhelmed that my mind clears. And that's me, happy, confined within 4 walls, with only 2 non-verbal children for company. I was losing a sense of myself. 2 years later, that card resurfaced. And instead of stuffing it back in the drawer, I stuck it to the fridge. And I looked at it long and hard. My situation was still pretty much the same. Still no babysitter. Still 2 children who needed me. But my need to do something, to take action, was stronger than all the limiting factors in my way. Stop making excuses, I told myself. And so I embarked on a series of adventures with my children in tow. First, we went to Thailand and worked in an elephant sanctuary, which was a great success. And then I decided to train as a dive master, as I figured it would be easier to take my kids to a beach than it would be to drag them through the jungle. So for 3 consecutive summers, we worked on a tiny coral atoll in the middle of the Banda Sea, and I taught coral reef ecology and monitored the reefs while the children played with the local kids. And I felt like I'd found the perfect balance, a win-win situation. I could work and they could play. But most importantly, I was back. I was an expedition leader once again, and I could stop talking about myself in the past tense. Even without a babysitter, I'd managed to change my world. So it wasn't long after that, I'd done a few more expeditions, and I started noticing the reactions from other mothers in the playground. Things like, "Oh, you're so lucky, you're always off on an adventure. I wish I could do something like that. My life seems so dull in comparison." And I recognized the look in their eyes. I saw their compromises, that they'd hold the fort day after day after day without even taking a small time off to reconnect with themselves. We as Women's Day are so separated from each other. Mothers with small children at home often suffer from severe bouts of depression, as do women whose children have flown the nest, as do women who can't have children. The statistics in the UK are that 1 in 4 women will suffer from depression at some point during her life. We live in an isolated and disconnected society, and through my travels around the world, I see how impoverished we are because of that. Without a community surrounding us, holding us accountable, without supporting us, encouraging us, without communal activities such as cooking together, making things together, sharing the childcare, and spending time with each other, we quickly start to close down and retreat and suffer silently, alone. And then it hit me. I could open up my world to them. I could design an adventure just for women, an adventure that would challenge and transform and connect them with themselves and each other and with the wonders of the world. So I was sitting talking this over with a friend of mine, and I grabbed an old notebook out of the bookshelf to write down some thoughts, and I opened it up, and on the first page was something I'd written years before about a journey of a lifetime that had never materialized. But I talked of matriarchal societies, of wild elephants, of conservation, and of Africa. That's it. We'll go to Namibia and we'll track desert elephants. That's pretty extreme. And we'll call it the matriarch adventure. It's as though this book had been storing its secret until the time was ripe, which was now. So I quickly sprang into action, and I emailed all my wonderful women friends, and I asked them to spread the word. 10 days, 10 women in the Namibian wilderness, tracking elusive desert elephants, the most iconic matriarchs there are. Dawn yoga under flame-red skies. Group coaching around a campfire. Sleeping out under a myriad of stars. A meeting with Namibian women and hearing their story, and all else that expedition life has to offer. 8 weeks later, we were there, all piled onto a truck on the swollen banks of the Uhab River. 10 women who had taken this idea and ran with it, their faces expectant. What would the next 10 days bring? It soon became apparent that these women were a force unto their own. Unleashed and away from everything familiar, they rose to every single challenge and made the most of every visceral experience, whether that be trekking through quartz-strewn wilderness, intimate elephant counters, and sleeping out under the stars, and everything in between. The beauty of expeditions is that you have the opportunity to reinvent yourself. No one knows you. No one knows your stories. You suddenly have the chance to be the best possible version of yourself. And that's really exciting. And what also tends to happen is that you rediscover yourself. The old you, the carefree you, the you without any responsibilities, the you who took risks, and you're still there. It's amazing. The further you get away from everything you know, the more authentic you become. And you laugh more, like you did when you were a kid. You know, good old belly laughter. And these women really laughed. And what I noticed was that when there are no men around, no one to impress, no one to be compared with, no one to flirt with, this laughter forms a bond of sisterhood, of similarity that's reflected in our similar bodies that have experienced similar things. Days from civilization with our dirty hair and our dirty skin and our broad smiles, we are leveled. And that gives each and every woman the confidence to believe in herself once again. It's about stripping back. It's about being so far out of yours and everyone else's comfort zone that you can access your own individuality. In the wilderness, faced with physical and mental challenges, you feed off other people's strengths and experience, but also their struggles. As one woman said, no one had any expectations of me. They were just glad to be in my company. And that's what I witnessed. A group of women from different places, different ages, who a few days before hadn't known each other, but were now lifelong friends. And as we sat, watching our animal counterparts taking shade under the same tree, a comfortable silence fell, a recognition of something wonderful, something natural. The matriarch adventure was born of a desire to share the joys I experienced on expedition, to allow women to spread their wings, to see what they're capable of, to reconnect with something they may have forgotten about themselves, and to immerse themselves in awe-inspiring nature, and to return home confident and ready to take on new challenges. I'd hoped that by going on expedition, I could give these women a nudge, but it gave them so much more. I had always secretly wished that I'd been born a few centuries ago and that I'd been born a man so that I could have been a real explorer, discovering new continents and new civilizations. But now, as a woman in the 21st century, I feel I've discovered something else. It's not about uncharted territories. It's about uncharted emotions. And it's not about dominating and colonizing and separating. It's about reconnecting. And it's not about whether or not you can find a babysitter or whether or not you do change the world. It's about a deeper understanding of your own strengths and resourcefulness in the face of self-limiting beliefs that can easily be dispelled by spending time in the company of other women just like you.